So good morning everyone. Today we'll be discussing about the humerus here. Okay. So this humerus, it is an example for the long type of bone here, and it is placed between the scapula above and radius and ulna below here. It forms shoulder joint with the scapula and it forms elbow joint with the radius and ulna. So if you see the position of this humerus, it is placed in a oblique direction, downwards and a backward position here. So if you see the body or shaft of this bone, it is cylindrical and it is irregular in shape here. Okay, and it is appearing just like a twisted appearance with 4 surfaces and 2 extremities here. So what are these 4 surfaces? One is the cranial surface here. So this is the cranial surface here, and this is the caudal surface here, and this is the medial surface here, and the presence of this musculospiral groove, it indicates the lateral surface here. So coming to this cranial surface, so you can see this cranial surface is triangular in outline, which is wide and smooth above, and it becomes narrow and rough below here. So this cranial surface, it gives attachment for the coracobrachialis muscle here. So coming to the caudal surface here, the caudal surface is rounded and it is smooth here, and it blends with the lateral surface here, and it presents a nutrient phenomena about the middle of the distal third of this caudal surface here. So coming to the medial surface here, so the medial surface, it is nearly straight in its length here. Just above the middle, it presents a teres tubercle, mainly for the insertion of the teres major muscle here. And this medial surface, it blends with the anterior surface as well as the posterior surface here. So coming to the lateral surface here, so this is the lateral surface and it is spirally curved, forming the musculospiral groove which lodges the brachialis muscle here. So the musculospiral groove, this is a musculospiral groove, continuous posterior face above here and winds around the front here. So lateral surface, so this lateral surface, it is separated from the anterior surface by a distinct border of crust of humerus here. The crust of the humerus bears above its middle the tuberosity, this we call it as a deltoid tuberosity, and this crust of the humerus, it ends distally just above the coronoid fossa. This is the coronoid fossa, just above here, the crust of the humerus is ending here. So this crust, this gives mainly for the insertion of the brachiocephalicus as well as the superficial pectoral muscles here. The deltoid tuberosity mainly for the deltoideus muscle here. A curved line here, okay, just you can see here, a curved line extends upwards from this deltoid tuberosity mainly for the lateral head of the triceps here. At the upper part of this curved line, there is a nodule-like structure here, mainly for the teres minor here. So coming to the proximal extremity, so the proximal extremity consists of 4 structures. One is the head here. So the constricted portion just below the head is the neck here, and it consists of 2 tuberosities. One is the lateral tuberosity, another is a medial tuberosity. In between these 2 tuberosity, there is a intertuberal groove or a bicipital groove here. So the head presents a circular articular surface here, which articulates with the glenoid cavity of the scapula here. Okay, so it will be articulating with the glenoid cavity of the scapula to form the shoulder joint here. Okay, so it helps in the formation of the shoulder joint here. So tuberosity, so this is the lateral tuberosity and this is the medial tuberosity here. So this lateral tuberosity, it consists of 2 parts, the anterior part and a posterior part here. The anterior part, we call it as a summit. The posterior part, we call it as a convexity here. So this anterior part, summit, so you can see it is arching medially over the bicipital groove here. Okay, it is overhanging the bicipital groove, and this summit, it gives attachment for the lateral tendon of the supraspinatus muscle here. So below and external to this summit here, so we have a large circular rough area mainly for the insertion of the infraspinatus muscle here. So this is the posterior convexity. The convexity gives attachment medially to the medial tendon of the infraspinatus here. So coming to the medial tuberosity. So this medial tuberosity, it is smaller, consists of again anterior part and a posterior parts here. So the anterior part here, so it forms the medial boundary of the bicipital groove here, and it gives attachment to the medial tendon of the supraspinatus and to the deep pectoral here. So the posterior part of the medial tuberosity, it gives attachment for the subscapularis here. So intertubercle groove here, so or we call it as a bicipital groove. It is bonded by the anterior divisions of the lateral tuberosity as well as the medial tuberosity. So in life, it gives passage for the tendon of the biceps brachii here. So coming to the distal extremity, so the distal extremity, it is oblique, it is a oblique surface here. It is divided by a ridge here. So this ridge divides the distal extremity to two unequal condyles here. The larger one is the medial, and it is also called as a trochlea here. So the medial condyle, as you can see, it is crossed by a groove which extends into the olecranon fossa, and this olecranon fossa, it articulates with the, you can see, this is the semilunar notch of the ulna here. Okay, so it will be articulating. So the distal extremity, it presents anteriorly above the coronoid fossa, or it is also called as a radial fossa. This coronoid fossa, it receives the coronoid process of the radius in case of extreme flexion of the elbow joint. During extreme flexion, the coronoid process, it enters into the coronoid fossa of the humerus here. So behind and above the condyles here, okay. So these are the condyles. Just above the condyles, we have the presence of a epicondyles here, okay. So these medial epicondyle, so it is more prominent and it gives origin for the flexor muscles of the carpus and the digits here. So this medial epicondyle, it bears a tubercle mainly for the attachment of the medial ligament of the elbow joint here. So the margins of the olecranon here, okay. So these are the margins of the olecranon. So fossa, these are mainly for the origin of the anconeus muscles here. So the lateral epicondyle, so it bears a laterally the condyloid crust here. So it is in the form of a raised ridge here. It gives origin for the extensor carpi radialis, common distal extensor, and a medial distal extensor here. So this condyloid crust, it forms the posterior boundary of this musculospiral groove here. Between these two epicondyles here, okay. So between these two epicondyles is a deep olecranon fossa which receives the, so this is the anconeus process of the ulna. So during the olecranon fossa, it receives the anconeus process of the ulna during extreme extension here, okay. So during extreme extension here. So the distal extremity, it also presents a rough depression here, okay. So this is a rough depression laterally and a tubercle medially, mainly for the collateral ligaments of the elbow joint here. This is about humerus. Thank you.